Okay guys, welcome back to part 2 of our little poster tutorial. In part 1 we set up our basic elements, and in part 2 we're going to finish it off by playing with our text a bit. So let's flick over to the software view here. You'll notice we've got a little bit of background music there. I'd set that up for another video and totally forgot it was there, so hopefully that's not distracting you too much. I'll leave it on for consistency. Let me know in the comments if you prefer with or without music. Hopefully it's not too loud. So this is where we left off last time. We got our basic elements in place, and we want to crack that text up, break it up, and make it look all shattered, as if this comet is flowing through, it's about to hit the earth, but it's shattered the text on the way down. So let's have a little look at how we're going to do this. A couple of slightly different techniques what we're going to do. We're basically going to work with the polygon lasso tool quite a lot. So this one here, polygon lasso. And how this is going to work is we are, let me just get a good size there. We can close this character panel now as well. We're just going to take that polygon lasso tool. We're going to come to our correct layer here. And maybe just rename that and just main text or something, just so we know what it is. Take the polygon lasso tool, and we're just going to make sort of big selections here. And we are going to just then start to cut little bits out. And I'm just nudging. Well, I select with the lasso tool, and then I press V on the keyboard to go over to the move tool instead. And then I'm just sort of either moving it with the mouse or nudging it with my arrow keys just to get it in position. What I want to do is I want all of the motion to be kind of coming out the way from the center, so out to the left here and then out to the right on this side. So try and think of doing that as you go. And again, we're probably not going to get it to look exactly like the example one, because every time we do this it's going to be slightly different, but that's okay. And we're just going to keep playing like this. I'm going to put in these little cracks. Let me see, just maybe a little tiny chunks coming out the end there as well, like that. So that's our first technique that we'll use, is actually cutting and moving parts of the text. What I want to do as well, if I zoom in here a little bit, on the insides especially, where I don't want to move them quite as far, I want to maybe just take that selection tool and just get very, very thin wee slivers, and instead of just hit the delete key, and that'll make it look like we've got those wee cracks in there. We don't want to do that too much, but it will create the same effect, and that's especially effective in this inside where we don't have as much room to split them apart. But especially here on the outside, we want to, or on the far side away from that center line, we do want to actually move it to create that nice movement effect. So this is going to take a little bit of time. This is probably the most time consuming part of this whole tutorial. So what I'll probably do here is I will show you a little bit how I'm doing this, maybe on a couple of different letters. And then I will pause the video. You can go for 15 minutes and sort of work this up on your own, and then we'll come back. I'll maybe sort of come back part of the way through. Do I like that selection? No, I don't know, that'll be a bit more on. I'll maybe come back part of the way through, show you how I'm progressing, and then pause again, something like that. But we just want to get this shattered, kind of like it's concrete and it's just been blasted and broken apart. So to remind you, sort of the final effect we're going for, we're just going to use those two techniques, either moving chunks of the letter or just cutting little slices through to create this sort of shattered glass effect. So let me see, what else do we have? We have this sort of thin sliver here. So to me, that would be perfect if we take, say, one chunk of it in the middle here and just move that out ever so slightly. Then what we'll do is we'll take another little slice here. In fact, maybe we'll put another one there. And we'll just hit the delete key for these. So there, that looks nice and broken. And Maybe just take that little tip as well. Just smash that all off. And yeah, we're just going to continue with that. Just take these selections, so we're going out on the left side, and we'll do the same thing. We'll go out here on the right hand side. Hit my V key for move, just move these out a little bit. And what we can do is we can take quite big chunks to begin with, and then we can, so I'm hitting Control D to deselect, L for lasso, and then making that lasso tool, V for the move tool, and then just continuing to repeat those kind of hotkeys. Hotkeys are your friend here, because you don't want to be doing one thing over here, back here, over at your toolbar again. Hotkeys are your friend, so L for lasso, V for the move tool, Control D to deselect, and then L again for lasso. And yeah, just repeat those same couple of techniques over and over again. Take about 20 minutes to do it. Have fun with it, play with it, and just try and create that general overall look. We're just moving them ever so slightly each way, and continue to do that all the way down. So what I'll do now is I'll pause the video here for a few minutes. I'll break up all my text, and then we'll come back and reconvene for the next step, okay? And don't forget to save as you go. So I will see you very, very soon. Okay, welcome back, guys. So you can see there I've just progressed a little bit on splitting this up. Wee bit tedious, maybe took about 10-15 minutes there, just to split up all these wee pieces. Now, I sort of worked from the top down, and I've been thinking as I was doing this, I want to get the idea across that this is sort of, the comet here has sort of flown right down and smashed this through. So what I want to do is I want to take some of these wee chunks up at the top and move these out further. Basically, I want more damage at the top because it's had more time to crumble than down at the bottom. You'll see here the U is smashed, but it's not all spread apart yet. Not as many of these small chunks. Same with the N here. And I'm going to break up this D just very, very slightly. Not as much as these ones at the top. And I'm making that deliberate, just as if it's sort of the comet smashing through, and it's just the tiniest wee bit less time on that break. So fewer chunks and smaller gaps between them is sort of what I'm thinking to do here. And remember, we're using both these techniques where we select a chunk and then move it, or make a thin wee sliver and then delete it to create that crack in between. Let me see, what I'll do is I'll maybe break a wee chunk here, and you'll notice as you do this that there's certain shapes work better for moving than others. So an outward wedge shape kind of tends to work better, they'll separate better, and we tend to work in big chunks and then the smaller chunks beyond that. Let me see, I'll maybe take a little chunk here, seems to work quite nice. But on these bottom layers, as I say, they've had less time to break, just that wee millisecond less to break, so I'm not going to break them just quite as much. Fewer chunks here, lots more chunks here at the top, but because I want to get that kind of big destruction feeling. Alright, keep scrolling. Ugh, slow down lag. Come on. There we go. Because I want to get that sort of big destruction feeling, what I'm going to do is I'm going to move some of these out even further than they already were. So really quick at doing that, rather than me selecting all around them again, I'm going to use my magic wand tool. So I'm just going to select that, and the magic wand tool lets me, if I'm on the right layer, just click and select a little bit, and it'll automatically select it, and then I can move it. So the key for that is W. So I select it. You can't really see the marching ants there, too clearly, but they are there. And then I'll move it. So as I say W, click on it, V to move it, W, select, V to move. And particularly these wee small chunks, they should be flying out a lot further. I'm just going to take a couple of these and maybe push them out that wee bit further. I'm just pushing that design. And it's just W and then V. W and then V. Now what you also want to do is don't push it so far that you break the letter and you can't read it anymore. You still want it to remain readable. And just be careful that any of these wee chunks that are maybe still connected to each other, like there, they won't maybe separate. If there's a wee pixel connecting them, they won't separate just with that magic wand tool trick that I showed you there. But that's okay. It's to save just a wee second or two. It's not the end of the world. We can always go back around again with a lasso tool if we wanted to. So just want to bring a couple of those wee chunks out a bit further. On these top letters, as I say, just to make that destruction look like it's had that wee bit more time at the top, just to spread out. So here I'm trying to move this one out a wee bit. Again, get that splinter effect, but still have it readable. I'll maybe do this. I'll just select another wee chunk here. Too big a gap there, so what I'll do is I'll actually break off another wee chunk. This hopefully work just to fill in that gap a wee bit, make it a wee bit more readable. Let me see, how does that look now? Hopefully that should look okay. Yeah, do you know what? We'll call it done, just purely so we can get on with the tutorial. So there we go, we've got our cracked text. And let me see. What we want to do is add some of this kind of smoke and dust particles to it, and also add these cracks in the interior. So this is where we're going to bring in our brush sets that we talked about earlier. So I want to make a new layer. I'm going to make a new layer and I'm going to call this dust clouds. Oh, if I could spell that, there we go. Dust clouds. I'm going to select my brush tool. I'm going to leave it white. And what I want to do with my brush tool is I want to click this little icon here. Now this will normally be just a little circular brush like that. You'll recognize it up here. We can change the size and hardness. What I want to do is click on this little what do you call that? The words escape me. Little cog icon. And we want to go to load brushes. What we're going to do is load in these brushes. Now I have a selection of brushes here that I've downloaded over the years, but the ones that we want are the two that I've mentioned before at the start, cloud brushes and cracked brushes by Hoxman. So cloud brushes, if we click on that and I'll load it in and hit load. Now they should have been there for me already. I've probably just loaded them in a second time. There we are. So load in both those sets. We've got the cracks, we've got the clouds. I think I've got both of them in here. And what I want to do is select one of these cloud brushes. And if you're seeing the wee square icon there, if you tap caps lock on your keyboard, it'll toggle between the pinpoint of the cursor or the actual shape of the brush. And if you press that down, you'll see how it actually looks. So I just want to, especially up at the top here, just paint in some of those dust clouds. I'll zoom in a wee bit so you can see a bit better. Just to sort of make it look there's a wee bit more destruction coming off those. Now some of them might work better than others. Let me see, how's that one look? That one's a wee bit too cloudy for my liking, but if we make it smaller it might work okay. It's not too bad. What we want to be aware of is that if we keep clicking, they're going to come the same way each time. So to undo that, we're going to add a bit of random rotation to it. So I'm going to open up my brush my brush tools, go to Windows and Brush, and that'll open this little window here. And now we can do hundreds of different things with the brush here. All kinds of really good stuff, but we're not going to get into that today. All we want to do today is go to Shape Dynamics, and this little option says Angle Jitter. We're going to slide it way up, and you'll see the effect that has. Each stamp of the brush, instead of being the same orientation now, is going to be different. And I'll just add that wee bit of randomness to our brush, which is what we want. So I'm just going to lay down a few wee puffs of that up here. And be quite sparse, we don't need to cover the whole thing, because we have plenty of other brush shapes. So we're going to select different ones to get some variation in that shape. And we don't maybe want massive dust puffs either, we just want sort of very slight around those cracks. So maybe one or two more. Oh, the lagging is terrible here. One or two more, especially as I say around those cracks. And I will go up here to brush tip shape. This also has our full selection of brushes. Harder to find in here, maybe we'd better going to, oh, there they are. Select one of my other ones here. What's this one like? It's got some nice sort of wee like broken cloud shapes in it. This could work quite well. I'm trying to look at the angle it's giving me that brush and position it maybe somewhere it'll look better based on the angle it's coming out. So that should look quite good. Now I can of course manually change this brush angle, but just for the sake of quickness I'm just kind of going with what it gives me. Oh, this lag. Just kind of going with what it gives me. And you'll notice there I've just made it a lot smaller, should give us a wee bit more sharpness in our wee bit of sharpness in the shape that we're giving there. Let me see, and I'm just trying to pick random ones here, just so that we don't get the same thing over and over too many times. Some of them you find are better than others. This one actually looks like it's got nice sort of sharp edges on it, so that one could have quite a nice wee effect if we deploy that in places. It does look quite nice actually, I quite like that. But you want to be careful not to overdo it too much either, because you see in certain places it's maybe overpowering the silhouette of our letters. So if you start to notice that, that's okay. That's not the end of the world either. We can peel it back. Dust clouds. I'm just going to take my eraser tool, and with a big regular round brush, I'm going to slide this hardness setting down to 0. So at 100% we get a very sharp edge. Hardness down to 0, very soft edge. And what I can do as well is put my opacity here down quite low. So I think here in this area it's a wee bit too much cloud. So I'm just going to put the size of my brush up a wee bit and just erase that out a wee bit more. Anywhere that I think is maybe just overpowering it a wee bit, I'll just peel it back. Because we just want a really subtle little dust cloud there. I'm just being selective, I'm just eyeballing it. I'm not really using any scientific method here at all. They're just eyeballing. And there we go. So we've got some wee dust clouds. Makes it look as if if this is a big concrete letters being cracked apart, a bit of dust being thrown up. That looks okay. Yeah, for the sake of brevity of this tutorial, we'll call that done. Again, you could take 15 minutes doing it, really fine tuning it. I think I took a little bit longer when I was doing this one. But that'll do us for now. Well, do you know what? maybe a wee puff dust here, why not? There we go, lovely. Oh, that couple, and I didn't even touch these letter E's here, so there you go. Very, very easy. Messed up doing these tutorials. Anyway, let's carry on. Next wee thing I want to do then, I want to add cracks to the inside. I want to add some smaller, finer cracks. So that was the other brush set that we had there, the crack brushes. And let me see, we go brush tip shape. I should have those cracks in here. Yes, I do. So these ones are like a lot of finer kind of cracks, like this. But we're going to deploy these slightly differently. How we're going to do this, we're going to go to our main text layer. Now what I could do is get the eraser tool and use these brushes and erase bits out, but that's what we call a destructive edit, and we can't undo that afterwards. So we might put cracks in and then decide we don't want cracks there. We're going to do it a slightly different way. We're going to add a layer mask, and a layer mask doesn't erase things, it just hides them from view. So let me show you what I mean by that. If I select my text layer that I'm working on, so the one that has all the stuff, I will go layer, layer mask, reveal all. Now, when I click this, you'll not see any difference just yet, but you'll notice an extra little thumbnail has come down here. And if you've never used layer masks before, the way layer masks work is they add a second wee thumbnail, and it's a black and white thumbnail, and white is visible and black is invisible. So if I change my brush color between black and white, let me just choose a regular round brush here to demonstrate this. So big round brush. My brush is currently black. If I paint all over this, it looks like it's disappearing, or it looks like it's actually painting over black, which is on top of what we have. Let me hide that a wee second. That doesn't help either. So just trust me. If I paint black, it looks like it's disappearing. And if I swap that over to white instead, I can paint it back in. So a layer mask hides and reveals. Black hides, white reveals. So what we're going to do on this layer mask, now again, notice we're not painting on the layer itself, we're just painting on the mask. We're just choosing what parts of this text layer we want to hide. So I'm going to choose black. My brush tool, I'm going to set to those little cracks again. If I can find them here in my list. There we are, there's one. And I'm going to make it a lot smaller, but I'm just going to paint in those cracks. And again, we can choose different brushes each time, and we can make sure that our angle jitter is up so it rotates each time. Yep, that's changing. And just start to paint in these cracks, maybe even make them a wee bit smaller. And just add a wee bit more sort of fine detail to these big chunks. If you want to leave it as those big chunks, totally fine. It gives it more of a graphical, kind of cartoony kind of look. This final wee step here is just to kind of add a wee touch more realism. Now again, you don't need to stick with just that same crack brush every time. We can swap around and just try and pick what suits and where. And subtlety is the key here. Very, very subtle. Now, if I decide I draw in here and oops, I've overdone it too much. Let me just zoom in there. Remember, we're on a mask, which is a non-destructive edit, which means we're painting in black at the minute. But if we swap that over to white, we can replace this back in. Now, this isn't the best brush to do it, but you'll see white is bringing that back in. Now I know on a black and white image, me talking black and white for the mask isn't really helpful. How best to explain? Hopefully you understand the concept of a mask here, what we're doing. We are hiding and revealing, so ignore the fact it's black and white on a black and white image. The mask itself is purely just black and white. So I'm going to go back to black now, paint these in. There's a couple little cracks, and I'm just trying to think of the kind of layout that I'm getting. I don't like those last two placements, they're not really very good. Remember, most of these small cracks should sort of originate and extend out from the other cracks that we've made, from the big cracks that we've made. So try and follow that, and we can always just change the angle on this manually. And again, 10-15 minutes playing with it, putting these cracks in where do you think they should go. And as we build it up, you're going to see that it's starting to look very nice. Now you can do it sort of systematically, work from top to bottom. And again, if we're sort of working the idea that the top is sort of more smashed, we'll spend more time putting more cracks in the top here and really smashing that up. And sort of go very heavy-handed on it, because again, if we think this has had a few more milliseconds to actually get destroyed, I'll just swap over to another brush here. Just don't want to use the same brush too often, too many times. But if we really, let's say we really heavily crack this, and again, to mask, if I overdo it, just take a big white round brush and paint the white on that mask again. It'll bring it all back. But let's just have some fun with it. Let me see, that's a nice wee sharp one there. And you can see it's just taking all those sort of bigger chunks and smashing them up into smaller pieces for us. A lot faster than if we were manually cutting them with a lasso tool. And the good thing is, this mask, you can also just enable and disable it. So if we hit disable layer mask, brings everything back the way it was, just our solid chunks that we had. You see the little X here through the layer mask, and then we right click on it and enable it, brings all that back. So yeah, 10-15 minutes, just go through and start to break this up a wee bit further. Again, you might want to add more clouds up at the top here, where again, that little bit more time for it to disperse out. But you know, I think that's looking not too bad already. Add in a couple more wee cracks here. Some of the brushes in this set you might find work a wee bit better than others. That's totally okay, that's totally natural. So just literally just play with it, experiment, and see what you can get. This one, again, closer to the bottom. Fewer cracks maybe. A couple of wee cursory cracks in here. Shrink that down. By the way, if you're not seeing me use the slider for size up here or up here, I'm using little square brackets. Square brackets will enlarge or shrink my my brush size. So you know what, I could go at this all day, but we'll call that done right there. As I say, go back that cloud layer, we can maybe add some more cloud on it. Even do a secondary cloud layer, so we'll call it dust clouds 2. Find our brush or clouds again. Where was my clouds? The more brushes you have, they'll really start to build up. What I'll do actually, I'll take this secondary cloud layer, put the opacity way down, maybe 40%, make them bigger clouds. That works quite well. I'll even put it lower again, actually maybe about 10%. Just very slowly build that up. Actually, I quite like that, that's working quite well. because it gives it that idea. Like I say, it's just that wee bit more time to sort of smolder and spread out up the top here. And at that very, very low opacity. This is the thing, this actually is starting to look a bit slightly different from what we had in the original one. But I'm digging it. I'm just sort of experimenting and playing along and seeing what I get, and it's totally cool. In fact, I might even just, because we're using cloud layers here, I might even just go down to my planet layer. Planet glow 1, planet glow 2. I'll just add another new one. I'm going to turn off my shape dynamics here, angle jitter. My brush tip shape. Now this little thing allows you to manually control the angle of that brush. So I'm going to just rotate it around until I get something. And maybe just add in, I don't necessarily need to do this. Why not? We're just playing at this point. Just very, very, very slightly indicate the clouds as if this is planet Earth. You know what? I think I'm happy with that. Yeah. We're maybe a wee bit heavy on the cracks, maybe a wee bit heavy on the cloud as well. Again, what I can do is, if we've named all these layers correctly, where is my cloud? Dust clouds 2. It's maybe just taken away from the readability. So I quite like it, but it's taken away from the readability. But even that, dust clouds 2, I'll just pull the opacity down a wee bit. And maybe dust cloud 1, pull the opacity down a wee bit. So it's still there, a bit more subtle. And here on our layer mask as well, main text. I can't quite pull down the opacity on the mask itself without pulling down the whole layer, as you see. So what I can do is, on that mask, if I take a big soft round brush, come on, there we go, big soft round brush, and paint with white. So again, white reveals, keep our opacity quite low, and I'll just paint out a wee bit of that mask. Just where I think there, that is affecting the readability a wee bit. So even that's just improved it a wee bit. Okay, we'll call it done there. I think the tutorial's taken on a bit of time. Happy enough with that. Yeah, we could spend another half hour, another hour tweaking it and tweaking it a wee bit, but that's the techniques, and that gives us our bones of our poster. We could play with the sizing and stuff, go back, refine those cracks a bit more, refine the clouds a bit more, but I like that. I'm happy enough with that. We will leave it there for today. Hope you enjoyed that, hope you learned something. A lot of the techniques we covered there, very, very common stuff. Using that lasso tool, using the distort, using different brush packs. Those are all very basic workaday Photoshop tools that you'll use throughout your career. So hopefully you've learned something new there. They're very useful to you. And we'll see you next time for the next tutorial, whatever that may be. If you have any questions, any suggestions, leave them down in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching. Good night.